On March 26, 2025, Sweden announced a revolutionary shift in its military policy, revealing plans to increase defense spending to 3.5% of GDP by 2035, nearly tripling its current budget over the next decade. This ambitious plan, valued at $30 billion, is led by Defense Minister Paul Janssen and marks the country's largest military expansion since the Cold War. It reflects Sweden's new role as a NATO member and growing concerns over Russia's aggression in the region. Currently, Sweden's defense spending accounts for about 1.2% of GDP, or $11 billion. By 2035, this is expected to rise to around $40 billion annually, far exceeding NATO's 2% guideline, which Sweden is projected to surpass this year with a 2.2% contribution. The plan, primarily funded through borrowing, includes investments in advanced weapons such as air defense systems, submarines, Saab's next-generation Gripen fighter jets, as well as increased cyber defense and substantial support for Ukraine, including the ASC-890 early warning aircraft. Prime Minister Ulf Kristersson described this as a necessary response to extraordinary times, citing Russia's war in Ukraine and uncertainty about the future U.S. commitment to NATO, especially with the alliance preparing for the June 2025 summit in The Hague. This bold shift ends decades of Sweden's policy of military non-alignment and reinforces its integration into NATO after officially joining in March 2024. However, this financial strategy also carries risks, as reliance on debt could pressure Sweden's economy, a country traditionally balanced by a strong welfare system, and spark domestic debates over financial priorities. Critics might argue that such borrowing undermines Sweden's long-term economic stability, especially if global interest rates rise or if defense buildup fails to deliver commensurate security benefits. On the positive side, the defense industry, already thriving with a record export value of $2.9 billion in 2024, stands to benefit further, boosting jobs and technological innovation. Saab, a pillar of Sweden's military-industrial complex, is poised to expand production, potentially making Sweden a leading supplier of advanced systems within NATO. Strategically, Sweden aims to bolster its northern border in the Baltic Sea, where Russia's increasing presence threatens stability. The training of elite units for Arctic warfare and the modernization of bases near Russia clearly signals intentions to deter aggression, particularly around Gotland Island, often referred to as the unsinkable aircraft carrier of the Baltic, a key strategic location. This shift strengthens Sweden's position in NATO, positioning the country as a cornerstone in the alliance's northeastern flank, alongside Finland, which joined NATO in 2023. On a regional level, Sweden's military buildup has reshaped security dynamics in Northern Europe, reinforcing NATO's posture against Russia. Combined with Finland's 1,340-kilometer-long border with Russia, Sweden's enhanced capabilities create a powerful Scandinavian shield, especially in the Arctic and Baltic Sea regions, critical areas for trade, energy, and military positioning. The increased support for Ukraine, including billions of dollars in ammunition and equipment, intensifies pressure on Moscow, potentially forcing Russia to redirect resources from other fronts. However, this escalation could provoke Russia, which has long viewed the militarization of Northern Europe with suspicion. Discussions on social media platform X suggest that Moscow may retaliate using hybrid tactics, such as cyber attacks, disinformation campaigns, or even economic pressure, testing Sweden's resilience before its new capabilities are fully developed. Russian naval exercises in the Baltic and increased intelligence activities near Swedish waters, most recently reported in early March 2025, highlight this risk. For NATO, Sweden's commitment could encourage other European members to bolster their own defense, reducing reliance on the US and fostering a more equitable alliance, although the extended timeline of Sweden's plan creates a vulnerability gap that Russia might exploit. Comparing Sweden's plan to regional adversaries underscores the country's strategic ambitions. Russia, the primary concern, allocates about 5.9% of its GDP to defense, amounting to $19 billion in 2024, despite its economy being heavily strained by sanctions and the costs of war. Sweden's 3.5% target, although lower, leverages a stronger economy, GDP of $635 billion versus Russia's $1.8 trillion, and advanced technology, offering a qualitative edge over Russia's often outdated systems. For instance, Sweden's Gripen aircraft far surpass Russia's counterparts in terms of flexibility and cost-effectiveness, while its submarines are designed to counter Russia's Baltic fleet. Finland, Sweden's closest NATO ally, allocates about 2.3% of its GDP, or $6.5 billion, with plans to reach 2.5% by 2030, focusing on ground forces and artillery along its Russian border. Sweden's broader scope, Air Force, Navy, and cyber defense, complements Finland's approach, creating a coordinated deterrence that could overwhelm Russia's regional resources if implemented effectively. Norway, another neighboring country, allocates 2% of its GDP, or $10 billion, with an emphasis on naval assets and Arctic security. Sweden's higher target could push Norway to accelerate its defense spending, especially as both countries share concerns about Arctic security. Delving further into Sweden's strategy, its focus on hybrid threats, cyber attacks, disinformation, and economic sabotage reflects lessons learned from Russia's tactics in Ukraine and beyond. Sweden's Defense Intelligence Agency is likely to receive additional funding to counter these risks, building on its reputation as one of Europe's leading signal intelligence agencies. This capability could prove crucial in thwarting Russian moves, particularly in the information domain, where Moscow has targeted Nordic unity with propaganda. Additionally, Sweden's Arctic ambitions are tied to NATO's broader concern about Russia's militarization of the far north, where melting ice opens new shipping routes and resource opportunities. By training specialized units and investing in cold weather technology, Sweden positions itself as a key player in this emerging region, with the potential to collaborate with Canada and the US to safeguard NATO's northern flank. Economically, this increase could pressure Sweden's financial discipline, but it also presents an opportunity to diversify the economy. The growth of the defense industry could offset losses in other sectors, such as manufacturing, which has been affected by global supply chain disruptions. Furthermore, Sweden's commitment to Ukraine, beyond immediate aid, could ensure long-term partnerships, securing Stockholm a voice in post-war reconstruction efforts. Politically, Prime Minister Kristen's government may face opposition from peace-oriented factions like the Left Party. But public support for NATO, which reached 65% by the end of 2024, shows broad backing for this shift, especially as the threat from Russia grows. Regionally, Sweden's plan could trigger a small arms race among NATO members, pressuring countries like Denmark, which currently allocates 1.4% of its GDP, to increase its efforts. It also strengthens Baltic Sea defenses, where Russia's Kaliningrad remains a hotspot. If Sweden deploys advanced missile defense systems on Gotland, it could neutralize much of the aerial threat in Russia's region, shifting the balance of power. However, the decade-long implementation timeline means NATO will have to fill the gap with existing forces, potentially increasing temporary deployments by the US or the UK, a prospect complicated by domestic politics in these countries.